Hey, advanced kids. So far, we have studied lesson 6.1, which covers the introduction to public opinion. We know that individuals can express their opinions in several ways, some of them being writing letters to the editor, participating in rallies and protests, and voting. We have talked about the fact that public opinion can impact politics and how policymakers make decisions. We've defined public opinion as the aggregate, which means the whole of a set of individuals and what their beliefs are as a population. We know there are three types of public opinions. There's consensus, which is a large proportion believe something. There's divisive opinion, which means there's polar opposite beliefs, like pro or con against the use of legal marijuana. And then there's non-opinion, where there is no interest in providing information or results. We know that politics and political opinion can set limits on the government and what they can do. Our goal this time is to find out how public opinion is formed by political socialization. You should have the notes page opened up by now, and that can be found in Schoology, and that is right here in your Unit 6 folder, Unit 2, Chapter 6 folder, right here. So let's go through this as fast as possible. Here's the start. Our goal is to find out how political socialization shapes political attitudes. And here's what we know. Most Americans are willing to express their political opinions. Okay, most, not all. Very few people that I'm aware of don't have public opinions and they withhold those. People form opinions based on political socialization. This is a term we had in 6.1. And we know that political socialization is how people acquire opinions through different means. And there's really four drivers of where these political socializations come from. So what are the four drivers? The first is family and school. It is perhaps the most important of your political socialization drivers. It is where we learn things the earliest. We tend to follow our parental ideas, what our parental beliefs are in politics. If our parents are Democrats or are Republicans, we tend to follow them. And it has been shown that genetics is responsible for about 1/3 of our views in politics, our genes. So we don't have much control over that. But the other 2/3 is environmental. So the school is another one. So we're going to drop that in right here. And we know that the school and the family are very influential. Looks like I forgot to cover the two factors to influence where influence comes from parents. The first is communication, how they show us with body language and how they tell us their views as we grow up. Receptively, remember that we as individuals, as humans, we are always seeking parental approval. So we want to act in ways that our parents show us they're proud of us. So we will act like a Democrat or we will act like a Republican. We will say certain things to get their approval. And that's just how families are and how they influence us. Schools have a lot to do with our political socialization. And we learn about holidays. We learn about beliefs. We learn about politics in school. Think about what I'm teaching you. That's partly influencing your beliefs. And that may be a good or bad thing. Hopefully I'm not doing it in a bad way. All those things can support and promote democracy, and I guess in some places it could probably not promote democracy. Okay, I want you to know this next one for the test. It is education. Education is linked to political participation, and in general, the more education you have, the higher participation you have in politics. That's big. So if you go to college, you're more likely than high school kids to participate in college. If you go to grad school, you're even more likely to participate in college. Let's not forget the influence of peers. Our social groups shape our attitudes and beliefs. Now, I listen to some crazy music because of my friends and how they influenced me. I wanted to listen to the same things they did. I thought it was cool. I'm sure you do as well. Peer groups. Peer groups are members that share a common social characteristic. So think about your love of sports or your love of Fortnite, your love of ballet or volleyball. All those things can draw you into a peer group, and those peer groups have beliefs, and that is political socialization. Opinion leaders. Opinion leaders tend to be those that can influence us with their political attitudes. We hold high regard for certain individuals. We think a lot about them, so they can influence us with their attitudes. Let's take Obama, for example. Obama had a very positive stance on gay marriage. He thought it was okay. And if we look at the polls, we can see how things changed through our socialization with Obama. In 1988, 63% of people opposed gay marriage. They were against it. In 2020, in November, when this other poll was taken, 70% of people were in favor of it. So over time, the public opinion has kind of shifted how gay marriage works. It is now covered under many states and it's protected. All right. Number 5, how does political change impact political socialization? The key is very, very slowly. All right. And that is because of several reasons here. The first is that in the United States, we are a very stable nation. We don't have a lot of turmoil going on like a lot of countries in Africa. So political participation is the normal. It's kind of what goes on. People expect it. It's not going to change dramatically. It's going to be kind of consistent with what's been going on. If we look at a different country in Africa, like Libya, which is near a neighbor of Egypt, near the Nile River, they had a dictator named Gaddafi. He's now dead, but Gaddafi ruled with an iron fist. He shut things down really quick, and they don't have that anymore. So people were very, very slow to participate in big politics because it was discouraged under that dictator, under that dictatorship for so long. Okay, so if that's the norm, people are going to be really reluctant, or they're not going to want to participate in fear of being killed or thrown in jail or disappearing off the face of the earth. There are 2 things that are needed to create positive change, positive political change, and here those are. The first is trust in government. Okay, so if you believe in the government, you will think positively about it, and there might be positive change. The other is a term that I want you to memorize. It is political efficacy, and I'm going to draw a circle around this to highlight it a little bit more. It's going to be one I want you to know for your test. Efficacy is how you feel good about something. So political efficacy is going to be believing that participating or being a part of politics, such as voting, will actually work and create change. In elections of the past, people knew that their vote wouldn't count or it wouldn't matter, so they sat out. That happened in 2016. Well, now in 2020, more people than ever voted. Records were broken. More Democrats than ever voted. More Republicans than ever voted. So they were believing in the system and thinking that change was going to happen if they voted, more so than in 2016. Okay. The next part we're going to talk about is impact of the media. Media takes several forms, and we can see internet, radio, magazines, television, and newspapers. These are all forms of media, and in the internet, we've got things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. So here's some facts to start off with, but our goal is to describe 3 forms of media and how they can shape public opinion. The first is that let's look at 2 of the major opposing news stations. CNN, mostly Democratic and left side. Fox News is more right side or Republican. So what we see is that CNN reaches 1.5 billion people across the world. That's about a fifth of the world's population, and it covers 212 countries. If I remember right, there's like 270 or 290 countries in the world, so almost everywhere. Fox News, on the other hand, the more right-winged or the Republican side, reaches 86 countries, so you might want to write in the word countries here, and gets to about 100 million homes. So profound differences in CNN, obviously reaching quite a few more people, but obviously they're both very, very impactful. Okay, now the media is something that you're going to have to write in here, and I want you to write in the words news, TV, radio, and internet. So news, TV, radio, and internet are all things that we would consider media, and they influence public opinion. We know that media has an agenda setting effect. In other words, make sure you know this, the media gets us to think about a certain topic or issue in a certain way. That could be good, it could be bad. Let's move on. Let's see. Pausing here because I lost my spot. CNN, down here at the bottom. They're a more leftist news station, and if you've ever watched it, they in the past, tended to not show Trump very positively. They tended to show more Democratic views or views against Trump and the Republicans. That's just their goal. So that's an example of how the media is agenda setting. Okay? Moving on down below to number 2. Media offers ways for citizens to debate issues. In other words, it gets us talking about things we might not normally talk about. Number 3, news is probably managed. Okay? You see what the news crews want you to see. Social media. We have great influence based on social media, things like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. What I want you to do is to pause this recording right now and jump onto the Schoology file right there. Open it up and read it. It's one simple page. And what you're going to do is learn about how social media influences things and politics and political socialization. So read it and show me by answering these questions that you know how impactful social media is on public opinion. Answer these 4 questions right here by clicking in the yellow cells. Do not forget to watch this short video to learn more about the Cooney 2012 instance. Wrapping up here, evidence social media matters is that we know that some of us watch public or political comedy things like The Daily Show and others, and this is replacing many news featured reports. And people gravitate towards those and they enjoy them. And what's cool about that is that those political events can, and their talkings can get people to talk about things in ways that aren't usually talked about. Rapidly going through this, political events influence our public opinions. An example would be the attack on the World Trade Center. They influence our opinions. The Watergate scandal in the 1970s. 2 defined effects on the public opinion. The first is life cycle effect. This is the idea that people hold lasting effects of an event on political attitudes because of things they experience. So older people are more conservative in their values generally. Older people that lived during the Great Depression had fear of banks because banks failed and they took their money and they never got it back. There was fear of equality against immigrants and the LGBTQ and people of color as they were earning more rights. Older people are generally more conservative about that and protective of it. There's something called the generational effect as well, and this is long-lasting effects of an event on political attitudes. Long-lasting events of an event on political attitudes. Write that in. I know I'm trying to rush through this and missing a lot. So people that were alive during the Great Depression typically attached to Democrats because Democrats pulled them through that tough moment. And Reagan's economic prosperity in the 1990s, I believe, was it? No, it was 1980s. Reagan's economic prosperity that he brought in the 1980s led to an attachment to the Republican Party. Okay, to wrap up very quickly, task 2, you're going to complete this, finding any 2 other political events that have life cycle or generational effects on Americans. There's no hints. Do it on your own. Good luck.